So hello, everybody, and welcome to our Meet the Designers event, where we invite creative people to come in and speak to you around the format of 3 things to think about. So we're joined today with one of my favorite creative directors that I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years now, Jason Durham. To all of our attendees, there is, as you know, the button down below that says Q&A, so do not be shy. Ask any question that you would like. Jason is exceptionally open and passionate about the next generation of designers. So ask away, and after his presentation, we will go through all of your questions and try to answer them all. We're doing things a little bit differently today. So Jason, let's talk about your design life first. You've had quite a diverse career. Can you tell us, where did it start and what kind of work you've done?
Sure. Wow. Welcome everybody, by the way. I'm thrilled to be here. I love always meeting up with Phoenix and of course, chatting with the next generation designers. So to answer your question, Phoenix, it goes back a while. So I think I started off like probably a lot of the students here today. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be an artist, but I also wanted to be a digital artist, as that was coming up during that time period. So I started off in your classic studio graphic designer. So I had the opportunity to work after school with some of the bigger brands, international agencies, Saatchi & Saatchi, McLaren McCann, Publicis, while also building and developing my own clientele. So that was kind of where I started, kind of the beer, cars, pharmaceuticals. I lived that life and I loved it, because first and foremost, even at that early stage, it kind of helped me to understand, yes, we're working for the client, i.e. the GMs, the Molsons, the Pfizers, etc. But at the end of the day, our client was the user. And back in those days, you really didn't talk so much about it, but I knew what products I liked. So I thought, if I like this product, why? And that always kind of influenced my work. So I started off in the classic advertising creative, moved up to art director, associate art director, creative director in the agency world. Then I went off into professional services, which you might be thinking, why would you do that? And that's a good question. And the reason is simple. It is probably the most challenging environment for a creative, to work for lawyers in a legal firm as a national creative director, to work for high-powered, right-brained, industrial real estate agents, to work in VPs of finance in a government sector. So I felt I needed that to move to the next level. So that was kind of the first half. I'll stop there.
So how did you find those first, how were you working for agencies that big when you first started out? I know that is going to be a question that every single person is like, how did you get those jobs?
That's a really, really good question. I actually did intern at McLaren McCann. So that was kind of my first door in. But I didn't, in that particular studio, I was working with the experiential team, which maybe gave me a little bit more of a niche in getting into other agencies, because the experiential design team, yes, we did the visuals, the graphics, the monitors, but we also built the structures, the environment that you walked in. So whether it was a trade show exhibit, whether it was an on-site activation for, back in those days, it was Xbox and Nike, where you were immersed in an experience. So I had to quickly learn it wasn't just about, Photoshop and Illustrator. It was also about AutoCAD. It was also about After Effects. It was about all the other things that brought a full sensory experience to the user, to the client, to the person coming there. And I think that kind of just allowed me just to kind of move through. Once you have an understanding of that, we'll talk about that a little bit later. You really present yourself as a different breed.
Right.
And I've never left that.
It's interesting because last week we were talking to a couple of our alumni came in, and both of them, both David and Emily, commented on how at some point they both, and I did when I first started out, had to do the, yeah, sure, I could do that without actually knowing how to do it, and then figure it out. Like, and it's a great policy as long as you have the hustle to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have never gotten a job that I was qualified for. I will say that. And yeah, on paper, yes. But like, why wouldn't you learn something if you have the opportunity? And yeah, some sweat-filled nights, coffee-induced, jitters. But you do it, and once you do it once, you're in. You're good. So yeah, that's Don't go for the job of your boss, not for the job that's posted.
Right. Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to hand everything over to you now.
Sure.
You feel free to share your screen. I am literally putting you in the spotlight, and the floor is yours.
So, Phoenix kind of got us off to a start, and frankly speaking, guys, I don't really like talking about myself. And there's a few reasons why. I won't get into them here. But in terms of what we do or what we want to become, while who we are, tell me about yourself. Those are things that are very, very important. Where have you worked? Who have you worked for? What kind of types of work, specific design do you enjoy? That's all really important. But where we're at as designers, it always comes back to the person on the other side. Our audience, our client, our company, the brand that we work for, there's someone else. And once we understand or realize that they're the most important factor to this, design can just become things that you can never envision. And so that's what I've tried to do. Yeah, I've worked for this person in that company and, this brand and blah, 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 blah. We all work. If you're really interested in that, just go to LinkedIn. You get all the facts you need to know. But most importantly, it's not about who or what we do, but who we are. And I want you, those who are in the room, I want you to think of yourself right now and say, well, what am I? Ask yourself that question. What am I? What do I do? Oh, well, I'm a graphic designer. I'm a UX, UI specialist. I'm an interaction designer. I'm an LX designer. There are a lot of titles. But who are you? How does your brain work? It took a long time for me to understand that question and that answer to the degree where now I can walk into a room and I don't even say what my titles have been because they're not that important. But if you had to encapsulate it, here you go. Visual thinker. What's a visual thinker? Well, put simply, it's someone who thinks not in words, but in pictures. That's the simplistic way of doing things. But because those of us in the creative field seem to be able to do this skill with more grace and creativity than others, you begin to understand that the insights that come from someone who thinks visually, whether it's a mind map, whether it's a user journey, whether it's an application now that you're designing for a very specific audience, not everyone can do that or do it well. So if you're able to do it well, as I've told Phoenix many times, you will always have a full belly and a roof over your head, because not many can do it to the degree that those in this room can either learn, experience, and then be trained to do it well. So I'm a visual thinker. I think in pictures. And you're probably one who your mom or your dad or your teacher say, why are you looking out the window? Like, what are you thinking about? Stop daydreaming. No, it's the daydreamers. It's those who have an imagination that goes beyond the parameters of here's what you need to intake, visually, auditorily, or in any other way. So I'm a visual thinker. I would encourage this audience to be visual people. But in order for it to be rounded off, in my opinion, and again, this has happened over a course of a while, I've always been fascinated with people, humans. I'll call them the humans. Because when I think about people, people and humanity, where it's intriguing. What makes a person think? What makes an individual make a choice or a decision? Why do certain people feel a certain way when internal or external influences are put on them? When you actually think about those things deeply and try to come up with a reason, what comes out is magnificent. We are the most complex creatures on this earth. And to be able to have just a little bit of an understanding of why we do, what makes us click, and then add that to the world that we're in, creative design, visual thinking, design thinking, we've reached something. Because now what we can do is we can take, let's call it data, let's call it insights, let's call it content. And now we can actually take that information, be able to digest it, and then produce it in a way that people understand. Companies pay billions of dollars for data, yes, but they also pay billions for those that can take that raw, unadulterated data based on insights or observations, and now they're in actionable items that can be applied to a product, that can be applied to a service, that can be applied to our design, that can be applied to how we interact with electronic devices, touch screens, handheld devices, gaming devices. We have to understand at the crux of it all is the human. So how do we begin to incorporate that as an integral part of what we do as designers? Well, for me, it was simple. It's kind of like you combine things. No, I'm not a psycho, though some may disagree. But a love of psychology, because that's really what we're talking about, right? Why people do what they do. That's psychology. And that's a whole nother genre, a whole nother area that is, an amazing thing on its own. But taking parts of that, adding insight, and then adding our love, our passion for visual design and solutions that are design-based, you know what we actually come up with? We actually come up with an experience designer. And when I say an experienced designer, I'm not talking about going on and finding a company. We're trying to hire an experienced designer. Maybe even the better word is a human factored designer. And maybe that's something, over the course of your school, your courses, you'll have a chance to dive into, because human-centered design goes well beyond a 2D logo or branding exercise. It goes well beyond an industrial design of an excellent product. It goes beyond, interacting with someone in an electronic format, even something like Zoom. It encompasses it all. And again, I'm a coffee guy. Love my Starbucks, as I'm sure most of you do as well. Starbucks has done an excellent job of not making coffee. There's a majority of people who think that the coffee at Starbucks is horrible. It's bitter. I go in and, I don't know what to order. But what they've done an amazing job in their coffee world is that at the end of the day, all of their different offerings at the end of the day has coffee in it. And, you know, I'm an espresso guy, pretty simple, but you know, there's the frappuccinos and the mochachinos and all sorts of different things. But at the end of the day, they're a coffee house. And yes, their product maybe is up for debate, whether it's fantastic or not, but you know what they do understand? Humans. They understand the social connection between stopping in for a coffee at Starbucks every single day, year after year. Whether it's the barista, whether it's the design of the store, whether it's the fact that they just write your name on your cup. They get it. And so again, this philosophy can be applied to whether you're trying to become the best UX UI designer out there, whether it's your goal to become a creative director for a large international agency, whether you've decided to go into learning experience or instructional design, where now you're using all the things that you've taught or that you've learned in a very specific way to help or teach or learn, help others to understand. So Phoenix is asked to kind of put together 3 things, and man, that's hard. With what we do, that's really, really hard. It is. But if keeping it simple, and that's what we're trying to do as well as designers, make the complex simple, you can kind of do that on an umbrella level, and then on your own volition, dig deep, figure out what you want to learn about. So I'm going to give you 3 of mine. Number 1, know thyself. You know, one of those old Greek guys said this. And, you know, life was very different back in the 1st century or so when he was quoted, Socrates was quoted as saying this. But think about that in terms of who you are right now and what you want to be. Well, I want to be a designer. That's why I've come to the Toronto Film School. And when I say designer, I'm not just talking about graphic design. Just understand, I mean, all the disciplines that this fine institution provides for its students. But the key is know thyself, and we've touched on it. Do you have a clear understanding of who you are, what your passions are, your strengths, your weaknesses? What you can say with no ambiguity, I am awesome at this. Know thyself. How are we able to connect with our audience, with our clients, with our users? How can we say we know what you want, we know how you think, how you choose, how you act, but then we go home and we look in the mirror and say, who are you? We have to know ourselves. Once we understand who we are as an individual, and that's different for everyone, obviously, but once we have an understanding of that, then it's much easier to step into the shoes of someone else. And in our context today, our clients, our team, the brand we work for, and their users or clients or customers. Now we can make, now we can create, now we can build something amazing. Know thyself. And once you get there, you'll find that the pathway to creating some amazing work for amazing companies and clients just doesn't stop. Number 2, draw a toast. You're probably thinking, what are you talking about? Draw a toast. This is an exercise. We're not going to do it in its full effect here. But let's just say we were in a classroom and I gave each one of you a piece of paper. And here were your instructions. Draw a picture of how to make toast. So just think for about 10 or 15 seconds, because we're visual thinkers now, right? That's what we do. No words, no numbers or letters, just pictures. Do you have in your mind what you would draw first? What would it be? Would it be a car? Driving to the store to get the bread? Opening the refrigerator? Or would you just start with a piece of bread? Your first node. Keep thinking, what would come next? How many steps would your individual diagram, pictogram, infographic, how many would it take? Well, someone has done this research for us. And again, I can direct you to where this was found, and I've actually used it for some of the companies that I've worked for over the years. I find that it's amazing. Well, some people did this. And you can take a look and see what people came up with. Some are quite good, actually. The one on my right of this screen, you can see my cursor there. That one's actually pretty decent, though they wrote 2 minutes, no words. But we get the point. Some take a totally different approach, where you're not really quite sure what's happening, but you kind of get a general overall view. Here's some more. Some would use just the tools, the toaster, the bread, the butter, and that's it. Whereas other people realize, hey, there's a person involved here. So there's my guy right there, right? Ding. What would your pictogram look like? It's an interesting exercise for those of us who are claiming that we understand or have the ability to understand a process, design process, and then we're able to produce the solution for someone that doesn't. But you know what? None of these pictures actually table. What if you live in Europe? Do you know that in Europe, they make toast on a stovetop? Hot pan on a stove? If your user was from Europe, they would look at this and think, what's this box? There's a simple reason why my point number 2 is draw toast. What I would like to encourage you folks to do is, instead of just going in your mind with what might be the most obvious, think of all of the opportunities. Some people in this exercise actually drew a fire, campfire type fire, with a stick and a piece of bread on top. That's toast. The point is this: the act of making ideas visible, representing situations as visual interconnected systems composed of nodes and links. And just so you understand, a node is kind of how many steps it takes. So if you look at this picture right here, there are exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 nodes that allow the user to understand how to make a piece of toast. But some have 1 or 2 nodes. Some might draw 10 to 15 nodes, which is right, which is wrong. The point is this: visual ideas from a group can convert unproductive discussions into effective working sessions that foster clarity, engagement, and alignment. Do you get the point? Guys, today designers are not just asked to design an application. They're not just asked to design a beautiful piece of packaging. They're not asked just solely to design, a large-scale immersive graphic. Yes, those things. But now designers are being asked, we have a problem. It's a social problem: inequality, food scarcity, hunger, crime. And you know who's in those meetings now? When socialists, doctors, politicians, and government agencies, you know who's in the room now when they're discussing these issues at hand? You are. Because they're expecting your expertise now to be able to take all of this disparate information from all of these different individuals and make it palatable for everyone to understand. This is toast. Think of something more challenging. Clean water, COVID-19. The list goes on and on. Point number 2, draw toast. Point number 3, don't be a designer, think like a designer. What do we mean by that? Henry Ford, I think, said it best. Henry Ford said, if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. When you become the designer you want to be, and whatever discipline that happens to be, are you thinking about the solution in terms of what's already there or what nobody has thought of? Ask yourself, has there been another iPhone? Has there been another Toyota Prius? Those are 2 examples. And there are a lot of hybrid cars and there are a lot of digital devices. But those devices, those products, those designers decided we're going to do something very different. We're not just going to make a faster horse. So what does that mean? Insight. We have to understand very, very clearly what it is that our problem, our challenge is. And how do you get there? You're going to be a junior designer. So a lot of these things might not be put on your plate at the very beginning of your careers, but they might, because what we do now has evolved and has a change. So, insight. What does that mean? There's there's a book that I would encourage you to read, and it's about design thinking. And maybe that's something that some of you are familiar with. Maybe it's something that you're not so, but read. Be a design thinker in this world today, and the world is your oyster. So, insight. And that means what we have to do is we have to really get outside. One of the most favorite exercises when I was teaching at the Toronto Film School is we took the class and we just went outside, just around the area there, Young Street. And the assignment was simply find design. Find design. Go out, find design. Just in that little area that people walk through all day, the amount of pure, beautiful, unadulterated design in the buildings, in the parks, and the sidewalks, and some of the cafes. You think this is right here? Young and Davisville, are you kidding? Yeah. But the only way those students, and many of us will ever understand that, is if we just go outside. Go outside. Observe. Notice not only the design of nature around us, which is beautiful in of itself, but observe people. Observe the school children. Observe those who are going to work, those commuters, getting on the subway. Are they interacting with something? Their backpack, their device. Why did they put that outfit together a certain way? Notice the details. Because what you're really doing is you're actually working for your client. Sure, Saatchi and Saatchi might have your paycheck, and put that in your bank every week. But your client is really that human who's outside, who's interacting with products or services. That's your client. School children, teenagers, baby boomers, retirees, they're the ones who pay your bill because we're doing what we do for them. So get outside and observe. And yes, it'll often maybe be just a lot of data, like what do I make sense of this? But do you see how this is a better approach than downloading a report of people sitting around a table and we ask them surveys or questionnaires? That's all good. You can get some good information. But what I'm more interested in is what that guy does when he leaves the room. Let me follow you now. That will give me insight based on the observation that I've seen to be able to design whatever that product or service might be. And lastly, empathy. We don't often use empathy. We should use it more in this context, because there's nothing more frustrating than a product or a design or a service that has gone through all of these steps that we do as designers: process, visual thinking, mind mapping, different aspects. We're going to go this way, different scenarios. And then you have something and it doesn't work. And there's a whole whack of people who have just been left out of the conversation. So think about it. You've come to the Toronto Film School. You want to be a UX UI designer. You're focusing on the UX portion of that discipline. And you got your journey paths. You understand the user. You've done your quantitative research. You have the data. That gets sent off to the product managers. They vet it with those upstairs. Yep, this is going to be the most amazing application. And then you realize anyone that has arthritis aren't able to use your application well because you've put certain touch points on that screen in the wrong spot. Or anyone who can't see very well. Your accessibility really wasn't up to snuff. How do you feel? We should be designing for the extremes of society. And that's especially important now. The grandma who is not very computer savvy, but she needs to book her COVID-19 vaccination. 72 years old, Windows 95. What was the name of that old operating system browser that Windows came up with that has now gone Internet Explorer? Right? Empathy. Think about your audience. Think about your client. And in that way, you're going to be in the best position to be the best designer that you can. So those are just, 3 things that maybe you can think about. I would just want to leave and say, just evolve. Never be satisfied with the status quo. The things that you do at the start of your career and what you're doing 10 years later or 15 years later, in my opinion, it should be radically different, because aren't you a different person 10 or 15 years later? As Phoenix said, yeah, I started off as a studio designer. Now people ask, what do I do? And most of the time they don't even know. So I just say, I make things easier for humans to use in the digital realm. And that's it. Whether it's, working with now as a learning experience designer for a couple of big banks. I had a wonderful engagement with the University of Toronto just this past year, where now there was a whole cohort of professors who were resistant to moving everything online, because you just don't do that at the University of Toronto. You do now. We're in a different world. We all have to pivot. So it's not the tools that we use to help them to do that, something greater. It was the observation, listening to them to understand this really isn't about the tool, is it? This is about something else. So the solution that our team is going to provide for you to help you to do this and to understand it, we're going to come from the point of your greatest fear. And that was different for many different people. That's what a designer does. We design for the humans. And if you keep that in mind, I guarantee you're going to have the most fantastic careers. And what I feel is the best thing. Why would anyone want to do anything else? I mean, I don't know. I love it. And I'll do it till the wheels fall off. With that theme of evolving, sure, I'm a designer, like many of you are, but I've also been a stylist. I've also been a custom suit, custom men's clothing manufacturer. I've also been a personal trainer. And you know what? Those things are just as important as the design work, because all of those things weigh into what I do when I'm doing the 9 to 5. So have your passion. Get your flu-vog on. Do what you have to do. Know thyself. And so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, okay, so I had some Instagrams in the past and they were great for their time, but that's not where I'm at today. So today, literally today, I decided to put out what will soon be my new Instagram, my left brain, right brain. And those in this room, you know what that means, right? It's the constant balance between the two. And if we can strike that balance, the world will be knocking at our doors. So I'm carefully curating some of the things that will eventually be on there. So join if you'd like, stay tuned. Hopefully it'll give you something to think about. All right, Phoenix, my friend. There we go.
This is the thunderous applause that you would get if you could actually hear any of the attendees. There is so much that I want to say about everything that you just said, but most importantly, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for this overwhelming amount of kind of insight and experience and inspiration. This was absolutely amazing. There are a couple of very practical questions about the book. You mentioned a book. I have a couple behind me, but what was the book that you in particular were thinking about? Oh, there you go. Change by Design, Tim Brown. There's an overwhelming amount of fantastic books. My two favorites are Massive Change by Bruce Mao, which is not about graphic design, but Bruce, like I know him, right? Like we're buddies. He did something so different for a graphic designer. He created an agency that pulls in designers from all different, like he will have an artist or a choreographer working on a brand identity. It's astounding.
I've had the pleasure of working with him too.
Did you? I never have.
Not with his team at TIFF, right? So we do a lot of the installations for TIFF. So I had the pleasure of just.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I think we actually have one of our graduates working with him right now.
Really?
And the other one is this fantastic book, 100 Things Every Designer Needs to Know About People. And it's just literally 100 things that you may not understand how people work. And most of the things they talk about are at a physiological basis. Some of the things are at a cultural basis, but it's really great that it's like, humans are built a certain way. And a lot of the things that you were talking about, like empathy, our brains are built to be empathetic. So that's why when you look at a baby and you stick out your tongue, they stick out their tongue.
Exactly.
It's things like that. And
Wiring.
it's great to know.
It's wiring.
Okay, so I have questions for you, but I think that we are going to answer, you know, our students' questions because those are much more
Absolutely.
important. What does your creative process look like?
That's a really good question. Before I do anything, I meditate, I think. You know, briefs and drafts, they come so quick sometimes, and I know we don't always have the opportunity to do that. But my creative process is one where I first have to really understand what is the challenge. Just a quick example. You know, someone might say, you know, we need a new website. Our website's old. We need a new website. If you actually just think, maybe observe what's on the website. Go into the website as a neophyte user. You might find you actually don't need a website. You actually need something else, and that could be a whole new brand revamp. It could be something totally different. You know, back before the digital age was so proliferated, you know, you get requests all the time as a consultant or a freelancer. We need a new set of brochures. No, you don't. You actually need to sit down and figure out why your sales team they're not selling this product that I think is awesome. So what are you guys doing? It's not a brochure. So the creative process starts with deep meditative thinking on what the real challenge is, what the real problem is. And once you get that and get your client on board and they say, you're right, we actually don't need a new brochure. We actually need A, B, and C. Then you're able to do what you do best. And then using the things that we talked about. I'm a big fan of visual thinking, you know, mind mapping. Over the last 7 or 8 years, I've been in the learning experience design space. There's a process that we use called the ADDIE method: analyze, design, develop, iterate, and you do it all over again. ADDIE, ADDIE. You know, talk with humans. That's where your creative process starts.
Here's a very interesting question, and I have a strong opinion. Well, I have a lot of strong opinions, but I have a strong opinion about this. Do you think you're able to be taught to be a visual thinker, or does it have to come naturally?
I'll answer that this way. Did Michael Jackson have to be taught to dance? Did Mozart have to be taught to compose music? Do dolphins learn how to swim? So I have a very strong opinion on that too. There are those that are gifted, predisposed to the very things that we're talking about here today. Those that would never need to read any of these books, and they would get it. I'm not saying that's me, but I do find it interesting the things that I was trying to do 20 years ago, and I was getting kicked in the chiclets for even suggesting it. That's what I'm getting paid for the most today. So with that being said, some are predisposed to the things we're talking about, but also teach yourself. You can also understand it, learn it. I can learn to play the piano and probably get pretty good, but will I be John Mayer? No. That's my opinion. I always feel that the brain can be stretched, and I've seen it be stretched to certain things where people become really good and adept at what they do. But then there are those that have the gift from God, and it is what it is.
I agree with most of that. I do believe that anyone can be taught anything. Absolutely. And I absolutely agree that some people take to certain ways of thinking or processes faster than others. And it does seem like people are naturally gifted in some ways. Now, there is a couple of guys called ASAP Science that have an Instagram and a YouTube channel, and they've actually talking about this from a scientific standpoint. Because there's been a lot of studies about people that are naturally gifted and people that have to work harder and things like that. So it is something that science does say, that some people, it's just easier for them to do certain things, think certain ways. So anyone can be taught, and some people have to work harder. But I also think that sometimes there's a disadvantage when something comes too easy for you. And I shouldn't say too easy, but if everyone thinks that music should be composed in a certain way, and your brain does that very easily, and you slide into there with no problem, chances are you may not ever discover the other way to do it.
Absolutely.
So there's something that is very, we have a graduate, she was actually part of the very first class online. And Melissa has came back, so you can actually kind of go back in time and watch Melissa's. She came and she was part of Meet the Designers last year. And what she discovered while she was in school, because she struggled with certain things. She struggled with a lot of brainstorming and ideation. And she learned, and I do not remember what the condition is called. She has something, she is a very successful and very talented graphic designer who cannot visualize. It is not possible. Her brain does not see pictures. Really? Like she cannot, like if I say, imagine a beach, most people have a picture in their brain of a beach that is going to be dependent on their experiences.
Yes.
What they've seen, where they've gone. She will not.
Wow.
It's not possible.
Wow.
So there you go. If somebody who literally cannot visualize, and yet she is a layout designer.
There you go.
So, and I think that once she, oh, I see that somebody does have the answer. Thank you. I did not know what it was called. Aphantasia. Yes, that is exactly right. Now that I say it, I can remember, and she has it. And so she learned that not only can she be a graphic designer, but she can bring something to the table that nobody else can, because of the way that she thinks, because it's not easy for her.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's one last question that I think is a fantastic one to end with. Do you think do you think that this is more about passion or talent? It's that balancing act, right? Passion or talent?
Yes. Yes. These two things are interconnected and intertwined. Yes. And like I think what you just mentioned, Phoenix, I think there will always be a level of levels of talent. There will always be levels of talent that can either increase, decrease, grow based on experience, use, etc. But I also think passion for anything that bleeds into everything we do. If you ever talk to someone who's passionate about cooking, and they might be a cook, but they might not, there's probably other areas in his or her life that passion bleeds into. When they're at the grocery store, when they're at someone else's home, they see someone else's collection of fine liquor or wine, like that passion comes out there in another way. So you have, I was going to say you have to have it, but I stopped because I know a lot of people in design who are not passionate, and that's okay too. That's okay too. Some of us do this for for the love of it, and some of us do it for other reasons. And if you're good with both, that's the knowing thyself part. But I will say, for those of us and those of you students who truly have a passion, and maybe it's for this, what you're going to be learning, but for something else, allow that to bleed into other areas of your life. Go down the rabbit hole and just see where these things take you. And when you're down there, circle back and say, how can I apply this to my design world, to what I have to do, to why someone looks at me as a solution to their problem? When you become a solution to someone's problem, you have wings of an angel and you can fly. So use your passion to fuel those things, particularly in our work life, because work is work, and some days are great and some days aren't. So which is better, passion or talent? Or should you have passion or talent? The answer is yes.
Excellent. I think that is the perfect place to once again thank you so very, very much, especially now when time is so strange. It is truly appreciated that you've donated so much of it to us today. And we will see you again very soon.
I hope so. Thanks, everybody. Everyone enjoyed this steamy, hot afternoon in TO. Take care. We'll be in touch for sure.
Okay, stay safe, everyone. Be nice.
Take care. Bye now.